how in tennis and cybersecurity, a precise response makes all the difference. And in order to do so, I'm going to first introduce Rob Nachbar, who's a tennis fan, a principal in Kismet Communication, who also happens to be our PR agency, and a personal friend. And David Sylvester, who's the VP of Worldwide Sales at Lumu, and as you can see, a dog lover. David, Rob, good morning. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Ricardo. Hey, David.
Excellent.
Morning, Ricardo. Great to be here.
All right, guys. We're excited for what's coming. Guys, give me just 1 minute while we invite to the stage Victoria Azarenka as she deserves. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Victoria.
All right. Drop your panelist.
All right. I wish I had that kind of intro video for myself. Thanks, Ricardo, and thank you, Victoria Vika, for joining us. So there are quite a few interesting and somewhat surprising parallels between tennis and cybersecurity that we are excited to explore here today. So on the theme of preparation, they say that nothing is worth it comes easy. In terms of your own preparation, can you talk about how you prepare yourself in general before a match? Do you study up on every opponent? What else informs your strategy when you're going into a match?
Well, obviously, you know, it's all about paying attention to details. A lot of preparation comes, you know, way ahead before like the match actually happens. It always comes on the practice court. I do study my opponents, but also I try to focus on my game more, and how I just need to be aware of what my opponent does. But tennis is also about what you're going to create. You have to expect things that your opponent can bring, but it's all about you, all about precision, about details. The matches are long, so anything can happen. And you know, on tour you also play a lot against players, you know, many different times. So sometimes you have to expect the unexpected and adjust. And there's, you know, also a lot of factors that come into play now with the technology and the video analysis. There's a lot more data where you can be able to prepare yourself, but sometimes it's also a little bit more overwhelming when you have too much information. So it's harder to keep focus on being simple.
And to that point, you know, tennis is much a mental game as a physical one. How does your mental perspective and preparation for each game against each opponent, how do you feel that influences the outcome of a match?
Oh, very much. As I said, you know, there's so many variables in tennis. Sometimes, you know, things like the weather can have a big impact. The crowd can have a big impact, and all of that is something where you have to be mentally strong, prepare yourself, sometimes block out the noise, block out maybe what your opponent does, and try to focus on yourself. So there's a lot of mental factor, you know, when there's a tough moment, it's about who's going to be braver, who's going to make the right decisions at the right time, where you have to be either more patient or you have to be more taking risks. So mental game is a huge attribute for tennis for sure, and it definitely plays out in the outcome.
Imagine. And as you prepare and strive to continuously improve, we must also assume that your opponent does so as well. How do you stay on top of new trends, tactics, training tools in order to build on this notion of continuous improvement?
Yes, definitely. The game of tennis has developed very much so, especially on a physical level, on the equipment level. The balls, the rackets become faster, players become more stronger, a lot more physicality comes in play with power and speed. So it's always an evolution, which is like in every sport. And having things like Hawkeye and other technology, line calling. So there's a lot of things that come out more and more. So you have to be on top of those, and you always look for those, for that secret recipe where it can bring you even 1% where you can be on top of your opponent. So it's a constant evolution.
And David, drawing the analogy back to cybersecurity, also a lot of preparation, strategy, and planning that goes into facing a unseen adversary. What's your take on that?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think, the large part of the last 2 decades, we've been hyper aware of all the possible types of attack vectors that our adversaries are using to infiltrate our network and business. And if you're CISO, it's your job. You gotta be. But to be real, it's one of the most challenging aspects of our field in cybersecurity. And to be frank, it's exhausting. And if you want to draw on a parallel in tennis, imagine going toe-to-toe with Victoria in a never-ending tennis match where the attackers are just hitting the ball right back to you every time and not going away. The odds are stacked against you. They just got to crack you one time and they're in. And it's this never-ending time-suck cat and mouse game. So building off what Wayne said earlier, complexity, cybersecurity solutions sprawl. The average organization has 50 plus cybersecurity tools that they're using on average day to day. And that's pretty insane if you really think about it and trying to defend yourself and the onslaught of alerts that come, and not to mention your security budget to the dismay of your CFO. But what are we seeing as a more practical way, forward-thinking approach to prepare, study, and face our adversaries 2020 and beyond? It really boils down to that prioritization of intentionally looking for compromises, right? Putting more energy, time, and focus into that art and doing more with the network metadata. Ricardo explained how, the bad guys have to use the network to carry out their cyber kill chain and ultimately hit their objectives, right? So if you can efficiently collect, correlate, and understand what your metadata is saying, what it's messaging out, you're going to be at a much better strategic position to understand your adversaries. And the nice thing now is, with the continuous compromise assessment technology, this is realistic. You can do this now. So that's what we're seeing as, really a more practical approach to understanding adversaries.
Awesome. And so moving on to the title of this presentation, delivering a precise response, Vika. Tennis analysts have often commented on your ability to deliver a decisive response. How much of your success can you credit to the specific capability that you've developed over the years?
Well, the precision and the response is something is definitely you have to learn through the experience, and sometimes the bad experience help a little bit more, where you can practice that skill. Okay, you can analyze it better and see what you can do better next time. So I feel like I'm not sure it's a talent. I would say it's more of a skill where you have to constantly practice and be aware of and analyze after a match. That's why also sometimes it's very helpful to be able to rewatch your matches and kind of have a different perspective of how you felt and what was actually happening in the moment. So definitely that is something that you constantly have to train and develop. And I think that's what also makes a big difference between, you know, average player and a great player, that decision making, the precision of, and being very aware of the moment.
Yeah, and you've been on the tour for quite a while now. How has that changed as you've gotten older and more mature?
Well, the experience always helps, but you know, every day, every match is gonna feel like it's a new match. So it's a constant adaptation. That's what the tennis is, and I'm sure you can draw the line with the cybersecurity, where you have to be prepared for whatever. All you can do is prepare as best as you can, and then adjust to what's coming to you using the tools that you've been practicing and the skill set that you've been practicing your life, and obviously learning new things and developing new skills. So as I said, I feel like it's an evolution, and you keep going, keep growing, keep learning. Even though you play so many years on the tour, you still have things that you can learn and you can develop.
What other strategies do you draw on to formulate the right response at the right time to ensure the response, and excuse the pun, is on point? For example, do you employ visualization techniques, that sort of thing?
Yes, definitely. Visualization is something that you want to set up your mind, and you practice different techniques like breathing and trying to stay present. Try to find that focus in the zone where you can be precise, and like that laser focus on what you need to do in the moment, and try, as I said, try to block out many variables that are around you, where you have to just keep it very simple and be decisive.
Wow. And David, going back to you, why is a precise and timely response important in cybersecurity? What are some of the tactics that can be employed to ensure their response is also on point?
Yeah, time is definitely of the essence when it comes to cybersecurity. I mean, the more time you give the attackers, the more control they're going to have, and they're going to be able to dictate the situation. So you just think of a phishing website or ransomware spreading attack. You're not on top of this activity. It's going to wreak havoc exponentially. So a precise response for me starts with visibility. Right? You talked about some visuals there. Visibility of all your infrastructure, your hybrid infrastructure of today, on-premise, cloud, remote workers now with the pandemic. You have to have that full view. And then you need a subset. You need a subset visibility of which devices are compromised, which ones are the problematic ones that you need to know about and do something about. And just like Victoria said, make it very simple and easy to understand and see. So visibility, very first, key component, what makes a precise response. The second point I'll make is, compromised context is king here. And if you have bad intelligence, you're not going to be able to defend off the attackers. You need to make split-second decisions as well. And that's the beauty of Lumu, is just giving you, that who, what, how, when attackers are coming after your network, and putting it right in front of you with a quick glance. That's what we're building at Lumu. That's what we have. So visibility, compromised context. And then the last point I'll make is, there needs to be action with this intelligence. We still see far too often where, compromised devices sit and reside on networks, and there's this, this kind of lackluster response to doing something about devices communicating out with adversarial infrastructure. And it's important that, CISOs do not allow this culture to occur. It's going to come back to haunt. And again, another tennis analogy here. If that's kind of what you're doing, think of Victoria 2 feet away from you, throwing the ball up and ready to just spike her full power serve right at you. That's what the cyber attackers are going to do to you. So, going back to the good news, you can operationalize the concept of continuous compromise assessment. You do this, it's going to complement everything you're doing with all those attack vectors, but you're going to prioritize looking for compromises. It's going to be game, set, match with the adversary.
It's a terrifying idea.
Right.
Because I've seen her serve. It's fast. So, Vika, we have two special guests joining us here in the form of video, which we'll cue up here.
I do believe that as a tennis player, it's constant problem solving and trying for solutions and trying out things. On the surface, if you're just watching as a spectator, it might just look, oh, this guy's playing so good. But all the little decisions we have to take in every point, in every game, in every match, in every tournament, there are so many of them.
The biggest difference between any other sport and tennis is that you have nobody else to talk to. You have a coach, but you can't talk to them. You have to problem solve by yourself.
That was quite a match. That's quite a documentary too, if you haven't seen it. So, Vika, going on that theme of decision making and having to constantly make decisions, throughout a match like you're talking about, what's your take on problem solving? Do you kind of see it the same way that Roger does when he's talking about just kind of staying in the moment?
Yes, definitely. And he mentioned two things: problem solving and finding solution. And I resonate better with the finding solution rather than problem solving. It's a little bit more of a positive tone to it, and it creates a little bit more of like an action feeling for me, finding a solution and how to do that. And I feel like he's very right when saying we have so many decisions to make, and sometimes there are decisions where you have to make, like, hit the ball and make a mistake and really go risk something, and it may not pay off in the moment, but it's gonna take you into the strategy, kind of few more steps ahead. So sometimes you do have to think like a chess player, not really think about just this point, think about maybe a next game. And it's to find that balance where you have to stay in the moment, but also think about a little bit of a strategy, ahead. Like and as an example, I would say maybe somebody starts with a high intensity and then trying to keep your energy a little bit later for the match. And when guys, for example, I would say play 5 sets, you don't see that intensity in the beginning of the set. You see the most of the intensity later on in the set. So there's a lot of micromanaging, making small decisions, being strategic, but also a big balance of staying in the moment.
Do you want to play 5 sets?
No, I don't even want to watch 5 sets. I think it's way too long.
All right. So we're going to take you down memory lane into your first Grand Slam victory at the Australian Open.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, the player from Belarus had the belief, the standout player of the tournament, winning her first Grand Slam title in straight sets. Azarenka, now the new #1 in the world.
That's gotta never get tired watching that, right?
I don't actually. I honestly, you probably can count on one hand how many times I've seen that, unless somebody shows it to me, like an occasion like this.
Well, I'd watch that like every night before I went to bed, but I never thought much of anything. So talk us through what was going through your mind. How are you able to keep your focus at such an intense moment?
Well, it was my first Grand Slam final, so obviously you are a lot more nervous because there's things, you know, that are just higher stakes. So you want to do good, and the factor of like, oh, I don't want to embarrass myself out there as well comes into play. But I felt like the match before that gave me a lot of confidence and clarity and believe that I felt that, you know what, going into the match, I know I'm gonna win this match. So I did have that self-belief, and my first two games were not really good, and I picked it up from there and kind of never looked back. But the first thing that I felt, obviously winning, I'm sure a lot of people say joy and stuff, for me was a relief, because it was like, okay, I've finally done something that I worked for, you know, so many years, for blood, sweat, and tears, and, you know, dreaming and being all the disappointments and the early mornings. So that was like a fast, you know, like a time lapse flashback in my head that played out, and it was relief. And obviously after, it's joy, and it's there's a lot more emotions come to that, but the first one was that.
Well, is it different mindset going into a match as a underdog when you're first starting out versus being the favorite, being the number one?
It's definitely is a different feel because and it's something that you have to accept and learn. Where somebody, when you're on top, everybody wants to beat you, and they don't have pressure. But I always liked that pressure because I felt that it was a deserved pressure. Not everybody has an opportunity to have that pressure. So I embraced it, and it was more, I mean, it was challenge for sure, but it was more fun for me to be able to go through those obstacles.
And how are you doing now with being sidelined with the pandemic?
It's a little bit weird, but last couple of years I had some of those breaks, so it's a little bit different for me. But just the ability that not being able to travel has been a little bit weird. It's been a little bit uncomfortable not being able to kind of have a free type of travel and motion. So
I guess your family's seeing a lot of you now.
Yeah, my family is in Belarus actually now, so unfortunately they cannot come because of all that. So that's been a little bit frustrating.